Dr. Castleberry back with part 2 of our asynchronous discussion in public relations, advertising, and brand management. We're looking at student questions submitted based on our readings in week 1, and I'm going to try to give us some information, feedback, also talk about ways we can enhance our writing question asking process. All right, so good stuff here. A couple of questions from Sarah in week 1. First, how did people create the concept of what might grab the attention of a consumer? Well, there is that old adage that there is nothing new under the sun, and so people have been having great ideas, spreading great ideas for centuries, right? From probably millennia, right? We can say, but advertising has always been about participating and succeeding, in a competition for attention and financial gain. All right, so once these became these they're typically profit driven, right? Unless it's politically driven, in which case we're getting into different types of terms. We're not talking about advertising. We might be talking about campaigning, or we might be talking about propaganda, right? Those types of politically oriented terms. But advertising has had that, but it's about competition, sustainability for attention, and the pursuit of financial gain. How do they advertisers? I'm not sure. Concrete language here. How do they know the most pleasant side or combination of color, textures, everything? How does it work together? What is that process? What's the secret formula? In other words, I think, and what we can say. How do you know? It can't just be instinct. There's more to it than that, and there's too much competition out there for us to just be existing on gut alone, right? Oh, I just had a feeling it needed to be green instead of blue. That's too that tempts too much in the way of potential financial loss there. So it needs to be this combination of observation. All right, and we could even call or extend this term education, right? So you can study it in school, but you also need to be observing it in the field. Also skills training, direct skills training in a specific area, like advertising, marketing, and so on. But also experience, and that's one of those that you get shortcut, and sometimes we don't feel as great coming out of a job interview when we're younger, because they will come back to you and say, oh, well, we really like your classes that you took, and your portfolio looks nice. We're looking for some more experience, And you think, I know, that's why I'm here, to get some experience. But internships, things like that, can help us along a little bit, but finding opportunities to plug in, right? You can't trade those hours of field work for anything. When do the people know what type of advertisement is good for their product? Okay, advertising is never a guarantee. It's always been a kind of gamble, but just like gambling itself, right? Whether you're thinking about casinos or professional gamblers, there is an increasing science to it. All right, and so when you cultivate, when you have enough invested in measuring the means of success, you can reproduce sometimes those same results. All right, so you think about today, we use terms like data mining or data analytics. All right, you perform market research. It gives you information about the product, the audience, its impact, its presentation, and it helps you then go back through these phases of polishing and prepping and getting something ready to be a successful product ultimately. Why does a product advertisement run for a short time while others run for what feels like far too long? That's an interesting question. And try to think of a concrete example in your question writing, each of you, so that we can tie these to kind of open up what we're suggesting there. But the short response I would give is that successful campaigns run longer, all right, because they're successful. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They will run until they're no longer successful, and then that's when you see it phase out. Think about something like we keep using fast food, but it's one of those advertisements we see most often. Sonic, all right, the Sonic drive-in chain, and they utilize the two men in the car. These guys who are trained comedians, or sort of graduates of improv school, I believe in Chicago, but they've been at this for maybe almost 20 years. Okay, so early 2000s at least to present that they are doing this, and it's, there's a sustainability to this, right? They found a formula, it's a campaign, and it works. Sometimes you see it, campaigns shift gears entirely, and it's because something is not working. The advertisements aren't driving traffic into the doors of whatever type of store, and so you have to adjust. And in the internet economy, you have to be able to adjust immediately, or run a risk. I mean, you're losing profit every day. How do they know who are we talking about? How do they know what age is right for the audience? Okay, so not entirely confident I'm interpreting this question correctly. Need more information, but what I do know is that designing this campaign or figuring out how to create an advertisement or campaign, it's about understanding the product first and foremost. You have to understand what the product is, and to then ask and know who is it for. And if we know who it's for, then we can craft a program, a strategy, a campaign, an ad that is directing in the correct direction, right? That's a little redundant there. Leonard asks a question: what role does internal communication play in companies? I guess an enormous role, habitual role. I guess I could describe it in a bunch of small terms like that. But if we're talking about if you're going into marketing or advertising, how much time is spent on internal communication versus external communication, I can speak from experience and say just as much time, if not more of your time, will be spent on internal communication. Internal advertising, you think about the largest companies, will require a lot of internal communication in the form of press releases, memos, or maybe even internal advertising of it could be everything from corporate events to if it's a sales driven company, then you're sending around promotional materials and saying, here is the latest campaign that we're running, or here's the latest that sell that we have, and so here's how you want to market that to the stakeholders and the consumers you interact with. Megan B asks a couple of questions here. How common is false advertising today in the media for companies that encourage weight loss? And are there any consequences, such as maybe the fake before or after pictures? And all media is a production, right? And I think that's the greatest thing is and the easiest to forget, right? Because media, by the nature of mediums that are storytelling mediums, literature, film, television, it draws us in and it invites us to invest in a process of suspension of disbelief. The tricky thing is advertising can do that same thing for us, and so this is a long-standing gimmick, all right? And this dates back prior to any of these mass mediums that we're talking about, back to when you simply had parchment and other things, right? There have always been gimmicks in circulation, but this is a big ethical issue because it's been shown to be highly profitable to tie false advertising back to, I think, specifically this health. If I could broaden this, health. I know weight loss is a specific claim often made, but that's kind of falls within that conversation of health, health products, health and wealth products. Not really wealth, but you get what I'm going there. Here's an opportunity to praise something, right? You will run across people always complaining about and running down our federal organizations. I'm thinking specifically about the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and like that they don't know what's good for you, and we want blank in our beverage or food distribution source, or maybe vitamins. Okay, you think about things like that. Maybe oils. I don't know, but there are these different products out there, and they can become sort of controversial or shrouded in mystery based on whether or not they've been regulated by the FDA, and they are legally required to print that on the label whether or not they have been approved for that. So there's so many of I'm going to use your Megan's request for this weight loss theme. I think about these like the powdered products, even pills, but powdered products you find in we call them like health stores like GNC, right? So I'm thinking like health and fitness now, right? Sort of get shredded, but also build up muscle really quick. 6 weeks. It's always some kind of like 4 to 8 weeks type of deal. And you'd be like, here, I had, dad bod at age 30, but now I'm 55, and I'm like, look like a cast member of 300, and so the tricky thing is where does the FDA fall on this? What are the there are these short-term promises or short-term benefits. What are the long-term consequences, right? What are long-term? What does that kind of dietary adjustment do for the organs? And that's usually something you see on the down end, or other kinds of issues you might run into. I think it's a reason why the FDA plays an important role. We may hate restriction as entrepreneurs, but we need a kind of checks and balances, because otherwise, sometimes, we'll poison ourselves. Think back to when read and write and study a lot about the Wild West. They used to have these sort of cure-alls, like a mason jar with the dropper, where the key ingredient was cocaine, to help cure worries, stress, right, vapors, and so on. And we need regulation to help us kind of move in a healthy direction collectively. Do you think it takes away from the legitimacy of an ad when companies use quote-unquote real customers to give testimonies? No, it can be quite effective. How believable are those testimonies? And the fact that they aren't actors, all right? So this we get into a fine line of sometimes they are actors, sometimes they aren't. Sometimes we suspend our disbelief and just go along with it, and sometimes it helps to know one way or the other. I think both are used regularly, and at the same time, they were still a base consumer, all right? Typically much older, typically much younger, they can't tell the difference, right? And they're not that savvy to that. But we're becoming increasingly savvy, but many aren't. All right, good question there. What is the exact difference between traditional marketing and integrated marketing? All right, so double check that. The Blakeman chapter, you all are going to love this book. Love's a strong word, right? So I'm gonna redact that, but it's going to feed you if you're sort of receptive to the messages there. Traditional marketing, we can think about this traditional medium: print advertising versus television advertising versus radio advertising, right? And print can take on several variations, newspapers, but also things like billboards, right? Posters and so on. And so integrated marketing is about a more direct strategy that's trying to get at a kind of relational or pseudo-relational attachment to the individual consumer, all right? And there's that personalized touch given, and that's why social media plays such a role, because it gives us that illusion of intimacy, of the old term would be face-to-face interaction with the consumer, but now it's, I guess, digital face-to-digital interface, or are we dealing with a rep or an actual human? Tough to say, which is part of that marketing game. So, great questions there, and we're going to come back and wrap up our week 1 series. All right, so hang tight. We'll be back with part 3.